Xenophobia, xenophobia, xenophobia. With the recent events going on in South Africa, lots of Africans have vowed that they will abandon South Africans and that they are praying that apartheid should return to South Africa so that the South Africans would learn the hard way for being so xenophobic or Afrophobic to other Africans. Now, this can be very tricky because the truth behind this thing can be much bigger than what we might think it is. From my perspective, I believe and I feel that Africans in general should not abandon South Africans in this period due to these various socio-economic and socio-political turmoil that is going on in that country. Now, I will be highlighting some few points, primarily 6 of them. I'll start with number 1. Now, over the last 12 months, there have been reports stating that some white South Africans are beginning to return to South Africa and many more are beginning to confirm their citizenship status, because at the end of apartheid regime, many of them left South Africa for maybe Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, a few of them in the USA as well. But majority of them left for Europe. And at the time when they left, their citizenship was revoked or slightly denied. So in recent months or the past few years, they are beginning to try to regain their citizenship status. And in fact, a report compiled by at least the BBC, which I am conversant with, records at least 12,000 white South Africans that are willing to return to South Africa and are beginning to check their citizenship status. This is going on despite the various claims of white genocide happening in South Africa. So one might question, why is that really coming to South Africa, and why is it coming at this pivotal moment where blacks are being chased away? Let's dive deeper. Now, when many of them began to return to South Africa, they cited different reasons. Some of them claimed that the cost of living in South Africa is now much better than it was in the past, and that the government is doing very much better. They claim that the exchange rate is also very friendly and that crime rate is low. And most importantly, one particular factor they mentioned was that in case there would be a third world war, that Africa would be the safest place to live in by then. Now look at this, let's flip the coin. Right now, Africa is not the most dangerous place. There is religious terrorism going on. There is civil wars in some countries like Sudan and Congo. There is insecurity in many places, and there is corruption. And Africa is often seen as a burden to the world, or the sick man of the world. Previously, China was seen as the sick man of Asia, but now I think Africa is seen as a problematic one that everyone has to deal with. Now, for them to claim that South Africa suddenly has a lower crime rate, and in the previous year, these same people came up and said South Africa has one of the highest rates of sexual assault and gender-based violence in the world. And yet suddenly the narrative is now flipped upside down, and then they claim that South Africa is now one of the safest places to live in. I was surprised when I heard this in fact. So I'll taking us to the second point here, which is the misdirected reach of dissatisfied South Africans. Now, a lot of South Africans are dissatisfied regardless of their ethnicity, blacks and white. I'm sure you've seen documentaries of poor white South Africans that are suffering currently. And for me, when I assess the situation, the apartheid regime tended to just favor more white people, but also favored mostly people who were members of the ruling class. So those who were the inner circle of the political machinery of apartheid South Africa. So there were some white South Africans that were not part of that government's inner circle, and so many of them did not cash out during that period. Many of them who were part of the government, they made big moves and got access to most of the mines in South Africa, and those who didn't get mines got large areas of farming land. So you go to South Africa today, there is extreme economic inequality, or I'll say income disparity, between white South Africans. On one side, there is the extremely wealthy white South Africans, and the other side, there's extremely poor white South Africans. There are few middle-class South Africans that just live their daily life and they don't have access to large-scale resources like you might imagine. But then, those ones are a very tiny minority. A majority of them are either extremely rich or extremely poor. Now, for the topic of misguided or misdirected reach, One thing must be noted. In recent years, the government of South Africa, particularly the ANC, have been dragged to court for various economic problems. The former president, Jacob Zuma, have even been thrown into jail for allegations of corruption. One of the few cases in Africa. Most African presidents go to jail for cases of war crimes and crimes against humanity, but not specifically about criminal offense or corruption, financial crimes. But then, yes, Jacob Zuma is now in prison. And then we now have the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, that is going through a very intense court battle, particularly in regards to the Buffalo Farm scandal, where hundreds of thousands of dollars, almost $1 million, I think, is rumored, was found in his farmhouse where he rears cattle. I think he rears buffaloes, and he claimed that a Sudanese businessman came to South Africa to buy some buffalo, and then that money that he found in his house was gotten through the proceedings from the buffalo he sold. Because after some months, he left the money, I think, stuffed inside his furniture. After some months or a year, some robbers broke into his house and stole the money, and they kept on spending and spending and spending and spending. And by the time they were caught, they were left with, like, I think, like $500,000 or $400,000. So imagine how much they had stolen for them to have spent and lived extravagantly without being caught. And when they were caught, they still had a lot of money to spare. So the ordinary South Africans are not protesting against Jacob Zuma or Cyril Ramaphosa or the other members of the ANC or the Democratic Alliance in South Africa. They're not protesting about the income inequality that still exists between those who cashed out during the apartheid regime and those who were disadvantaged and who had their livelihood turned upside down due to this racist and inhumane political ideology. Rather, they are directing their rage at the other migrants. Now, I'm in no way undermining the fact that, yes, there may be some migrants who are criminals. However, not all migrants are criminals. And we have seen different cases and reports of South African protesters who are going into hospitals and throwing out foreign nationals who just need medical care, like maybe a pregnant woman who is obviously not a threat to society. Yes, I know that women or human beings in general can commit crime whenever they are pushed to, but a pregnant woman is more on the vulnerable side and she should not be brutalized. But no, I've heard of cases where a pregnant woman died in a hospital because the South Africans were protesting that she is causing traffic or causing burden on their national healthcare system, and because of her, some other South Africans are not being treated because of the overpopulation of the foreigners in South Africa. However, these things could be easily addressed by meeting the government to either provide more healthcare facilities to cater for both the foreigners and the nationals, the natives, or they should meet the government to deport these people. But then what they do instead is burning businesses, throwing out people from hospitals, stopping children from going to schools. Children are just children, they're not criminals. But then I've seen videos and I've seen cases of them stopping children from going to schools just because they are foreign nationals. And sometimes they even brutalize our own fellow South Africans, because yes, we are all Africans, and some of us might look like South Africans and some South Africans may look like some other nationals. Like I think there's some tribes, the Veda people of Eastern or Northern South Africa, that is claimed that they look like Nigerians. So imagine if you're from that tribe, and I think they are more of the Bantu stock, because South Africa, yes, even the black South Africans are mostly mixed with the Khoi and the San people, particularly the Xhosa people. Xhosa people are mostly mixed with Khoisan and Bantu people. So they might look like maybe like kind of Asians with ethnic food, like Nelson Mandela. Yes, that's a perfect example of a Xhosa man. So even myself as a Nigerian, some people have mistaken me for South Africans. They claim I look South African, but I don't know how exactly I look South African. So, but then you can imagine, because we're all Africans, and yes, we have our differences and we have our varieties and diversities, but there are some South Africans that would be mistaken for Ghanaians or for Nigerians or for Malawians or for Zimbabweans. Because why? It's one continent, and then you can hardly differentiate. There are even many Nigerians that live in South Africa and have a South African accent, and they don't speak Zulu or Xhosa or Afrikaans, and it will be hard for you to differentiate them. So even during this case of the unrest, many native South Africans have even fallen victims to it. So I see it more as a case of misguided or misdirected rage. This rage should be channeled the appropriate way and justice should be sought after, not us. And his investment are mostly in the UK, the US, and the Channel Island. I think the other name for that is Jersey also. So this is just two of the top richest men in South Africa, the top richest white men. White men are the richest. They have some few black men as well. But if you look at this equation very well, the black rich South Africans, their wealth is mostly concentrated within South Africa, and maybe a few others in Namibia, Botswana, but mostly within South Africa. But for the rich white men, majority of their wealth, almost all of their wealth and investment is outside South Africa. And South Africans today, they like boasting about Elon Musk, which is currently the world's richest man. They say, oh, he's an African, he's from South Africa, he's an Afrikaner. But he doesn't want to be an Afrikaner. He wants to be an American. He wants to be more whitish. He wants to be more Caucasian, more European than he may actually be. So he moved to the US and he's living there, and his investment are also there. Yes, his father, I think father has or had businesses in South Africa, but then you can see that the trend is not just within, it's not just with Elon Musk, it's also with the broader white South African population. I'm going to talk about the racism that everyone seems to ignore. Apartheid fell about 30 years ago or more than 30 years ago. However, South Africa still experiences lots of racism. Every country has its own form of discrimination, be it classism or be it tribalism, be it racism. Some countries have it fewer than others, like within themselves, within the citizens themselves. For example, so South Korea is a very, I would say, homogeneous, not completely homogeneous, but mostly homogeneous country, because no society is really homogeneous if you should look deeper into the history. So, but within South Korea, they are mostly inward. They look inward within themselves, and there's no much ethnic diversity within themselves. So there is almost no case of tribalism or racism. However, they are not accepting of other South Koreans. For example, if you're a South Korean and you grew up in the West, they won't really accept as a full South Korean. And in fact, with the advent of the Russian war in Ukraine, there were some Koryo, they call themselves Koryo people. They were Koreans who migrated to Central Asia and Eastern Europe in the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century. And they settled in later Soviet republics, from Russia to Ukraine to Uzbekistan to Kazakhstan to Kyrgyzstan and even to China. So when this war broke out in Ukraine, many of these Koryo people who still looked very Asian began to migrate back to South Korea, where their ancestors came from. But the Korean people did not even accept them. They didn't see them as fellow Koreans because they saw them as other people. They see that similarity in culture, maybe similarity in language. Few of them kept the culture and the language, few of them converted to other religions, but they were not fully accepted. If it were to be an African, for example, if an Afro-American should come back to maybe Nigeria, they will be fully accepted. The only issue is if these people decide to maybe exact dominance over us, then there will be some kind of strife or some kind of restiveness between the native Africans and the returned Afro-Americans, like what happened in Liberia and Sierra Leone when the Americo-Liberians began to dominate every single thing, and they felt the native Liberians, the indigenous aboriginals, were barbarians and they did not really carry them along. And in fact, it was more of an oligarchy, so it caused some kind of strife Liberia existed for over 100 years, but before the Civil War occurred. So you can see that it was a pattern that continued for a long time. So it's not like we hate Afro-Americans. No, we are accepting of them. If they come back, we embrace them. We don't judge them. We even happily reintegrate them back into our society. However, it's not the same case for South Africa, which is very, very ethnically diverse. Another ethnically diverse, some say race is a social construct, but looking at it from a race perspective, it's also very racially diverse. On the one side, when apartheid existed, there was racism by the whites against the Indians, the colored who were mixed race, either black and white, or Malay and black, or Malay and Indian, but just mixed race people were called the Cape Colored, or the Coloreds, or the whatever colors that they were called. And then also racism towards the Bantu people and then the Khoisan people. So there was like kind of, I'll call it caste system of South Africa, caste system, not the Brahmin and the, what's the other one? Dalit. So the issue of racism still exists in South Africa, and in fact, there are some places where black people can't really walk freely within South Africa themselves, even though they're the majority ethnic group in the country. And a very good example is Orania. Yes, the claim is like a close-off community, like the Amish community in America, but it's not entirely true. There's some other estates that are within South Africa that is mostly white populated, and if a black man walks around those estates, they might be discriminated or called monkeys. And then Orania is not just a community that's closed off like the Amish people. No, they also have their own currency, their own security network, their own power supply. I'm not saying it's bad. Any community can do that as well. But the restriction they place on either employing black people, maybe to come and do fixing work. I watched the documentaries where they claim that they will never employ another person outside of their community, and they would rather send their person outside to learn the trade or to learn the skill and come back to do the work in their community, not employing an outsider to do the work. So it shows you a deeper population. They may try to look good and nice. And in fact, within Orania, they have many monuments that celebrate people who were pioneers of apartheid and were even guilty of committing genocide in South Africa and Namibia. So you can see that it is much deeper than you might want to accept. And South Africans are not addressing that issue, but they are facing the black people who are living there as some are legal foreigners, some are illegal, but they are not trying to give excuse to any shenanigans in the country. Now, number 5th thing I'm talking about is the Pan-Africanist foundation of the ANC, particularly in the struggle to end apartheid. Yes, South Africa was under the struggle, and when South Africa was under that struggle, South Africa wasn't left alone. That was the strongest period of the African Union, or the OAU, Organization of African Unity, and different countries supported the ANC and the other groups that were trying to regain freedom. Namibia, Angola, I know Namibia was more than South Africa at the time, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe primarily, Mozambique. Yeah, Angola, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique primarily were among the forefront nations. Nigeria supported, but not with human power. It was mostly financially. I think they sent troops to Angola to fight the South Africans when South Africa invaded Angola. But it was mostly financially. The federal government of Nigeria at the time slashed the salaries of civil servants to send funds to ANC to buy weapons and to continue fighting the white South Africans to make sure that they regain their independence. And even one of the most important things that the world almost forgets about is the important role that Nigeria played, not just sending money. Because in the late 1990s, the Nigerian dictator, President Ibrahim Babangida, which was the military leader at the time of Nigeria, he summoned Henry de Klerk, I think that's his full name, to Nigeria to discuss the end of apartheid. So it wasn't just about sending money, it wasn't just about sending military support, it was also diplomatic. Most countries of the world were not doing that at the time. And the only countries that supported South Africa at the time was mostly USA and Israel, which was running the similar pattern of apartheid regime with the Jim Crow law in USA and with the anti-Palestine activities going on in Israel. So, but then Nigeria, under Ibrahim Babangida, invited de Klerk to Nigeria, and they discussed heavily about the end of apartheid. And de Klerk, one of his major concerns was that he wanted to be sure that when apartheid finally ended, that the white South Africans will not be chased out of Africa. And the president, I don't know if it was a good at the time, but he assured them that there will be no genocide against them. They won't chase them out as long as we're willing to let the native South Africans live in peace. So we did a lot, but again, for the fact that we did a lot of things, we should take advantage of it understand the grievance for the people. I understand that yes, some Nigerians there commit crimes, but then they should not label all Nigerians, because now at this moment their posts are very racist, to be honest, and very xenophobic, even though they claim they're not xenophobic. They insult Nigerians, calling us the scam capital of the world, drug barons and drug leaders and drug cartels. They claim that we are useless and dirty and unintelligent, and we go around destroying the world, and we are the one destroying South Africa. And I will tell you today, the problem with South Africa is not Nigerians, it's not Zimbabweans, it's not Ghanaians. The moment Nigerians leave, the moment Ghanaians leave, the moment Sierra Leoneans leave, Zimbabweans and Malawians, when all of us leave, South Africa will still have its problem. We are not Cyril Ramaphosa. We're not the one who had Buffalo and who had $500,000 stacked up in his cushion, in his furniture. We're not the one who did all those stuff. We're not the one who's guilty of the corruption and the apartheid regime and the inequality in terms of resources being shared to people. We're not the one who's controlling the mines of South Africa. We're not the one who controls the central bank of South Africa. We're not the one who controls the system. So even if we leave, that doesn't change the system. The system is still there and it's still being dysfunctional. So sending away Nigerians will not really solve the problem. It's only cause a distraction. Now, we go to the last and final point, number 6, which is the imminent decline of the West and the escape of many of these Westerners to African countries, particularly South Africa, as a ploy to remain politically relevant, especially with the rise of BRICS. And in case you do not know, BRICS is the alliance of the global South: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So Brazil, yes, it's not only under the Western sphere of influence. Sometimes they try to be under America's influence. India is in between China and Russia sometimes, and they try to be close to Israel. China is way behind. They are becoming the next hegemony of the world, and particularly in East Asia. So in Africa, some analysts have said that they have 2 or 3 options: Egypt, Nigeria, and South Africa. These are the 3 biggest and strongest nations and economies in Africa. So South Africa has this, it still has this colonial legacy. And there was some time ago, I was reading a book in my library, my university library. That was, I think, in 2020. I read a book, an old book. I don't know if this book was released during the apartheid regime, but inside this book there was a map of the Western world. And that is Western world countries. Number 1 was Canada, they had the USA, they had Europe, they had New Zealand, they had Australia, and last but not the least, they had South Africa. South Africa was classified as a Western country. So it tells you many of these South Africans, white South Africans, are returning to South Africa, and all this xenophobia, it seems to be like a kind of ethnic cleansing to chase away the foreign South Africans or the foreign Africans in South Africa, to reduce the black population, to import more white people from Europe and North America to be there, and then to flip the coin by reinstating the white political party under the Democratic Alliance into power, for them to take control of the economy back again. Now let's see how it goes. Let's hope things go well. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, maybe I'm just giving a skilled analysis of this whole situation. But regardless of the case, the end shall justify the means. Thank you, and kindly subscribe to my channel. Have a nice day.